What's going on, YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Shoeshine Joe back at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes in this video. You will find history definitions, scripture information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best overstand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. The Queen's Gambit is a chess opening where white sacrifices a pawn, the c-pawn, to gain control of the center and initiate an attack, where white's c-pawn is offered to black for capture. Black can either accept the gambit or decline it. It's the classic bait tactic. Talking about a game of finders keepers, imagine a world where a papal decree could grant a monarch the right to claim entire continents. This was the 15th century's reality. The doctrine of discovery was a legal and religious tool justifying European monarchs' seizure of lands not inhabited by Christians. Any territory discovered could be claimed for the crown, as long as the locals weren't Christian. For Isabella and Ferdinand, this wasn't just a decree, it was a divine mandate to unify Spain and expand Christendom. The doctrine created a two-tiered world: Christian Europe as civilized, and everyone else as fair game. It fueled the age of exploration, turning sailors into conquerors and colonies into empires. For Spain's rulers, it was the perfect justification for their ambitions at home and abroad. This single doctrine laid the groundwork for colonialism, religious subjugation, and empire building. It gave monarchs like Isabella the confidence to dream globally, framing their quest for power as a holy mission. With this belief, they set their sights on the last righteous Muslim Moors' stronghold in Iberia. The stage was set for a new era of conquest. Numerous men and rulers tried to conquer Granada before Isabella but failed, as the Reconquista was a long and complex process spanning nearly 800 years. The Reconquista was a process, not a single event. It involved many battles and campaigns over centuries, with various Christian kingdoms vying to reclaim territory from Muslim Moors' rule. Many figures were involved in trying to conquer Granada, such as rulers from Asturias, Castile, Leon, Aragon, Navarre, and even Charlemagne's forces. All participated in attempts to push back Muslim Moors' control, but fail. Granada was the last stronghold of the righteous Muslim Moors. For over 2 centuries, Granada was the only independent Muslim Moorish kingdom in Iberia. According to the biblical narrative in the Book of Judges, Samson was stopped when he lost his strength, which was tied to his Nazirite vow, and specifically, his uncut hair. Samson's extraordinary strength was a divine gift, bestowed upon him as long as he maintained his Nazirite vow. This vow had specific requirements, including abstaining from wine, avoiding contact with dead bodies, and never cutting his hair. His long hair was a visible symbol of his dedication to God and his vow. The Philistines bribed Delilah to discover the source of Samson's strength. Through persistent nagging and manipulation, she finally convinced him to reveal that his strength would leave him if his hair were cut. While he slept, Delilah had his hair cut, thus breaking his Nazirite vow and causing him to lose his strength. Judges 16:20 states that when Samson awoke, he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. His loss of strength was a consequence of God withdrawing his spirit and the divine power that had been with him. The Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and imprisoned him. He was forced to grind grain in prison, a humiliating task. When he revealed his secret to Delilah and allowed his hair to be cut, and he lost his power. Judith saved Israel by deceiving and killing Holofernes, the Assyrian general, thus inspiring the Israelites to defeat the enemy army. The Assyrian army, led by Holofernes, was besieging the town of Bethulia, and the Israelites were facing defeat. Judith, a widowed woman in Bethulia, devised a plan to save her people. She approached Holofernes, claiming to be a loyalist seeking to help him conquer the city. Using her beauty and charm, Judith gained Holofernes' confidence, earning the right to stay in his tent. While Holofernes was intoxicated and asleep, Judith took his sword and beheaded him. Judith returned to Bethulia with Holofernes' head, which was displayed on the city gate. The death of Holofernes demoralized the Assyrian army, who fled, and the Israelites celebrated their victory. What we're getting at here is, I guess sometimes you gotta send a woman to do a man's job. Essentially, by 1492, Granada was the last righteous Muslim Moorish stronghold in Spain, an obstacle to the wicked witch of the East, Isabella's vision of colonization. Some people think that COINTELPRO started in 1956, which was a series of covert and illegal projects conducted by the United States Corporation. The truth is that Queen Isabella, under the Spanish Inquisition, started the first COINTELPRO operations, 1487. Isabella's campaign went beyond warfare. It was a masterclass in espionage and psychological warfare to take down Granada. She deployed spies, converted Muslims, merchants, even Moorish courtiers, to map defenses and exploit divisions. Intelligence flowed in, revealing cracks in Granada's armor. Propaganda spread fear and division, offering surrender terms to split Moorish factions. The Inquisition's reputation loomed, intimidating the population. Isabella and Ferdinand exploited internal rivalries, playing claimants against each other to sow chaos. Isabella knew the Moors loved booty. She had a group of her best girls dressed up with nice clothes with sweet-smelling perfume. She would have huge freak-offs in Granada, inviting all the high-ranking Moorish government officials. They would drink and get drunk, pillow-talking, telling all of their secrets to the girls. Isabella needed all of this intel to take tactical command of Granada. Taking tactical command refers to the authority to direct and supervise the execution of specific tasks by units or teams within an operational area. This authority is usually delegated to a commander by a higher authority to achieve the assigned mission. She also used them, sleeping with her girls, as leverage to ruin their life. If they didn't work with her to take down Granada, Isabella casted her spells. Most of them turned into informants. By the time the siege began, Granada's leadership was fractured and its people demoralized. Isabella knew that the Muslim Moors would have to get up for Fajr. The morning prayer in Islam is called Fajr, also known as the sub-prayer. It is performed between the break of dawn and sunrise and consists of 2 rak'ah, units of prayer. Fajr is considered a prayer of great importance due to its timing, right when they were praying. Isabella and her constituents, pawns, rush in catching the Moors with their pants down. They got caught slipping, meaning that something happens that someone is not prepared for, and that reveals an embarrassing or shocking fact about them. Or caught slipping generally means being caught in a vulnerable or less than ideal situation, often due to being off guard or distracted. But anyway, Isabella had done something no man had done. She had teabagged the righteous Moors. Victory was secured not just by force, but by cunning and manipulation. Espionage, propaganda, and psychological warfare proved as decisive as any army. Granada's fall was a triumph of strategy over strength. Isabella's methods would echo far beyond Spain, eventually turning into COINTELPRO operations at the Northgate Turtle Island. Now with Granada conquered, Isabella faced a new threat, the Barbary Moors, who were pirates in the Mediterranean. Now, the Barbary Moors. These guys were the navy that protected the coast of the Americas, Africa, and other lands where Moorish Muslims lived. These guys were like sharks roaming the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean looking for fresh meat. They were a rowdy bunch. And listen, these guys loved them some booty. Getting booty brought, a sadistic smile to their face. When being out at sea for a long time, booty calls. They liked getting booty with anybody that wasn't Muslim Moors. I mean, listen, it's the way they made their living. In the booty world, I mean in the world of pirates, booty refers to the stolen treasure or loot taken from a ship or location. This includes valuables like gold, jewels, and other goods obtained through piracy or robbery. The term booty is a pirate slang term that has evolved from the older word but, which meant exchange or financial exchange. Pirates often use the word ironically, as if they were exchanging the male victim rights to stay alive for their manhood. Hence the term booty pirates. Also keep in mind that police, lawyers, and most judges are pirates. But anyway, now the Barbary Moors. These guys were stick-up kids. They were robbers or jackers and kidnappers. A robber or jacker is someone who steals from another person. Robbery is the crime that robbers commit, taking someone's property or money by hurting them or threatening to hurt them. Kidnapping or abduction is the unlawful abduction and confinement of a person against their will, and is a crime in many jurisdictions. Kidnapping may be accomplished by use of force or fear, or a victim may be enticed into confinement by fraud or deception. The Barbary pirates, also known as corsairs or Corsicans, used various methods to rob people and ships during their activities in the Mediterranean and Atlantic. They often attacked merchant ships individually rather than in groups. To catch ships off guard, they would often hide most of their crew until they were close to the target, making it seem like their ship had a small crew. Once they reached their target, they would quickly board the enemy ship, steal the cargo and anything else of value, and kill anyone who resisted. They had treaties with some kings and would let their ships pass. You see, the Barbary Moors were Muslims, so they didn't rob other Muslim ships. Moorish Muslim ships were given a pass. If you didn't have a Moorish seal and flag, you were fair game. Some kings or queens had no name with them, meaning they had no respect for them. Just for mentioning their name, they would make you strip naked and walk the plank. They would laugh as you plunged into the cold, deep, dark sea and were devoured by sharks. I guess you can say they had a dry sense of humor. These Barbary Moors guys didn't jack around. A primary goal for the Barbary Moors was to capture so-called white people for sale as slaves or for ransom, especially white Europeans and so-called white Americans. They would also conduct raids on coastal towns and villages in Europe, including Italy, Spain, Greece, Ireland, and even Iceland, capturing and enslaving white inhabitants. These raids were so impactful that in some areas, coastal settlements by so-called white people were rarely established until the 19th century. It is estimated that between 1 million to 2 million enslaved white Europeans were transported to North Africa, America, Australia, and other places by Barbary Moors pirates between the 16th and mid-18th centuries. This was your real Atlantic slave trade. Countries seeking safe passage for their ships in the Mediterranean would often pay the Barbary pirates tribute or bribes to avoid attacks. Captured individuals who had the possibility of being ransomed would be held captive until payment was received. Captives who converted to Islam were usually freed but couldn't return to their home countries. In essence, the Barbary pirates' robbery, who went beyond simply stealing goods. It was a multifaceted approach involving violent attacks on ships and poor white people, plundering cargo and valuables, kidnapping and enslavement of people for profit, extortion through demanding tribute and ransom payments. This allowed them to thrive for decades and exert influence over trade and power in the region, extending even to the edges of the Sahara Desert. These guys were your first drug smugglers and became the first mafia, gang, and gangsters. A gang or tribe is generally defined as a group of 3 or more people who identify with each other and engage in a pattern of criminal activity, often with a shared name, symbols, or territory. Not all gangs, which are really tribes, participate in criminal activity. Isabella had a problem. Building a bigger navy wasn't enough. She needed a smarter solution, a craftier and sneakier plan. The key was in the symbols of Moors' authority: seals, flags, strategic metal contracts, and maritime documents seized from Granada. These items were a ship's passport, determining friend or foe on the open sea. By controlling these, Isabella disguised their Spanish ships as Moorish, fooling Moorish pirates into letting them pass. Spanish vessels, flying Moorish flags and carrying authentic-looking documents, moved invisibly through hostile waters. This act of maritime deception gave Spain a decisive edge, allowing safe passage for troops and trade. The conquest of Granada handed Isabella the keys to the western seas and oceans. This newfound security set the stage for her next ambition, exploring new routes to the Indies. The age of Spanish maritime power had begun, thanks to a woman. Now, these Barbary Moors wasn't slow. Many kings had bags on their head, especially one named Jack Sparrow, the Caribbean Moor. He was a corsair for the Ottoman Empire. He was known for his cunning and unconventional pirate tactics. They made a movie about him called Pirates of the Caribbean. They lie about the time frames and say his name was John Ward to steal his story. Jack Sparrow was also known as Captain Birdie, or Sparrow. They wanted little Birdie's head. Word tells that the bag on his head was the largest of that time, estimated to be 100 pounds of gold. I guess you can say they kept their eyes on the Sparrow. Every bounty hunter and his dog wanted a piece of Captain Birdie. Man, for 100 pounds of gold back then you could buy your own small country. But Captain Birdie was hard to catch up with. Sailing under a false flag was a high-stakes game of deception. Spanish captains had to convincingly impersonate Moorish vessels, down to the crew's appearance and the flags they flew. The Mediterranean was a patchwork of rival pirate states. Knowing which flag offered protection in which waters was crucial. Intelligence networks kept captains informed of shifting alliances. Legal documents stamped with captured seals completed the illusion. Pirates inspecting papers saw authentic-looking manifests and Moorish seals, never suspecting the truth. This combination of disguise and forgery allowed Spain to move resources and protect trade routes. Deception became a weapon as powerful as any cannon. Isabella's mastery of information and subterfuge homed in Granada, now ruled the waves. These tactics emboldened her to back an even riskier venture crossing the Atlantic. In the context of gangbanging, a false flag refers to a deceptive action where one gang or individual makes it appear as though he or they are with a different gang by wearing the other gang's colors and flag, but they're from a rival gang. This is something done when the gang member that is committing the act is passing through another gang's territory to keep from being spotted. Another form of false flagging in the same context is flying a gang's flag that you're not from. This can result in serious consequences. The goal is to deceive people, including other gangs, into believing they are down by using the gang's symbols, graffiti, or other methods to make it look like they're a part of the crew. A ship flying a different flag is false flagging. In the pirate world, false flagging can result in serious consequences. In gang terms, "what set you from" is a question used to ask someone about their gang affiliation, specifically which subgroup or set they belong to within a larger gang or neighborhood. It's a way of identifying someone's allegiance and potentially their territory. When identifying alliances and rivalries, knowing someone's set helps establish potential alliances or rivalries between different groups. Sets are often linked to specific neighborhoods or territories, so the question can be a way of determining if someone belongs to a rival group in a particular area. Sets can have varying levels of hierarchy and structure within the larger gang, and knowing someone's set can indicate their position or influence. The question can also be a prelude to conflict, especially if the person asking and the person being asked are from rival sets. The term set itself refers to a subgroup within a larger gang alliance, often associated with a specific neighborhood or area. For example, the Bloods, a large gang alliance, are composed of many individual sets. A ship's flag is crucial at sea, representing the vessel's nationality, set, and establishing its legal jurisdiction, block. It signifies the country, hood, under which the ship is registered and must comply with the laws of that nation, gang, as well as international maritime regulations. The flag also serves as a means of identification, allowing other vessels, human, to recognize the ship's nationality, set. This applies to maritime law, gang rules, customs regulations, and other maritime-related matters. Ships, gang members, flying a flag must comply with international maritime conventions, gang policies, such as the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS, Hood Map. Now listen, Isabella, lessons of espionage and disguise would soon shape the fate of the New World. She set the stage for Columbus, the spy. In the perilous world of 15th century seafaring, a ship's papers were its lifeline. Passports, or cartas de pasaggio, certified a vessel's identity and allegiance, stamped with royal or captured seals. In hostile waters, a Moorish sealed passport could mean survival. Manifests listed cargo, helping Spanish ships pose as harmless merchants. False manifests and flags enhanced the deception, deterring pirate attacks. Letters of marque authorized privateers to attack enemy ships, waging war by proxy. Isabella and Ferdinand used these to target rivals while their own ships sailed safely in disguise. These documents, authenticated by seals, were the machinery of Spain's maritime dominance. By controlling both Spanish and Moorish seals, Isabella decided who was protected, who attacked, and who traveled unseen. This bureaucratic mastery enabled Spain's rise as a naval power. It would soon authorize the most famous voyage of all. That's not all. Listen at this. The Wicked Witch of the East. Queen Isabella had another spell in her broom to cast on the Moors. You ever heard of April Fool's Day? Don't be fooled by April Fools. Expulsion and bloody genocide of Muslim Moors in Spain, the 1st of April, 1492. Story goes, in Spain, after centuries of Muslim Moors rule, the Muslim Moors were overwhelmed by the Christian army, led by Catholic monarchs. However, on the 31st of March, when the decree of expulsion was issued by the Catholic monarchs, the Moors hid and they were fortified in their homes. The Christian armies wanted to get rid of the Muslim Moors somehow. The Christians told the Moors that the Moors could leave their homes safely and could take only the necessary things from their homes. Moors also were told that they could sail away from Iberian Peninsula in the ships anchored on the quayside with the royal safeguard from the Christians and the Catholic monarchs on their expulsion. The Moors did wonder, and they were skeptical if this ploy was a trick by the Catholic monarchs and their armies. Then, Moors were requested to go to the quayside to check the ships. Later, Moors did so and were convinced. The Moors made preparations to leave. The next day, the 1st of April, Moors took their essential belongings and walked towards the quayside. But then, the Christians, perpetrated by Catholic monarchs, suddenly sieged and encircled the Moors from all directions. The Christians looted their homes and then set fire to them. Before the Muslim Moors got to the ships, the Christians had set fire to the ships as well. The Christians then attacked the Moors and slaughtered them all without mercy at all, including men, women, and children. Consequently, all Iberian Moors in the port were brutally massacred. Blood pooled everywhere. And the blue-colored sea had turned blackish red because their corpses were dumped into the sea. So, the Moors were totally fooled and massacred by Ferdinand, Isabella, and their armies on the 1st of April. They kept some of the Moorish navigators and their families alive to use to sail to the new land. You see, some of these people still thought the world was flat, but their puppet masters, the Black Hand, knew about the great beyond across the great river. The Moors knew about Turtle Island because they had been sailing over there for thousands of years and had children in the Americas. Since then, some Christians have been celebrating this massacre event on the 1st of April, aka April Fool's Day. This then became a ritual that was celebrated every year and that has been carried on until this day, not only in Spain, but in other countries too. Where they make fun of the Moors? People in this world celebrate April 1st as well as playing jokes on others on this day through sheer ignorance of this historical fact. We should bring out the facts of the story to all in order to put a stop to the practice of celebrating this bloody and shameful episode of the colonizers. Christopher Columbus was a spy for the Spanish Inquisition. He was a Freemason and a Knights of Templar working for Queen Isabella and the Church. A spy, in general terms, is someone who secretly gathers information, often for intelligence or security purposes. They may be employed by a government, a business, or even an organization to gather information about another entity. Spies can operate in various capacities, from infiltrating organizations to using technology for surveillance. A spy is someone who secretly collects information. Spies gather information that is often considered secret or confidential. These individuals, often called intelligence officers or agents, work for a country's intelligence agency. They may be employed to gather information about other countries or organizations, or to protect their own nation's interests. These individuals, also called industrial spies, work for a company to gather information about competitors. Spies are crucial in intelligence operations, providing information that can help governments and organizations make decisions, plan strategies, and protect their interests. Moors were part of Christopher Columbus's voyages, including the Niño brothers. Pedro Alonso Niño, a Moorish navigator. They were Moors from Spain, Granada heritage. They were the pilots of the Santa Maria during Columbus's first voyage in 1492. Their families were held captive, and they were told they had to help Christopher Columbus, their agent, sail to the Americas and bypass the Barbary Moors or their families would die. They had no other choice. His brother Juan Niño was the master of La Niña, and Francisco Niño was a sailor on La Niña. The Niño brothers were experienced sailors with a family history of marine expertise. They were the main navigators in the Atlantic voyages with the Columbus's expedition. They were referred to as the Black Conquistadors. The Black Conquistadors were mostly Moorish individuals, both enslaved by way of prisoners of war and some free, who played a role in the Spanish conquest of the Americas as conquistadors, participating in military campaigns alongside the Spanish as paid hands. Notable examples include Juan Garrido and Juan Valiente, who fought in various conquests and even later held positions of authority. They lie and say Garrido was the first Moor, which they termed as black person, to reach the United States, accompanying Juan Ponce de Leon in his expedition. This is too far from the truth. Christopher Columbus discovers America for the colonizers. The indigenous were already here. Like we said, the Niño brothers had been sailing to the Americas many times before Columbus. Why you think Christopher Columbus needed them to navigate him here? They just never been to the Americas because the Barbary Moors would capture them and enslave them. In 1492, Christopher Columbus made a voyage that led to the so-called discovery of the Americas for European colonizers. He sailed from Spain in 3 ships on August 3, 1492, and after a month-long journey, landed in the Bahamas on October 12, 1492. While not the first European to reach the Americas, his voyage opened the door to European exploration, colonization, and the Columbian Exchange, which profoundly impacted both Europe and the Americas. Columbus reached the Bahamas landing on an island he named San Salvador, which the indigenous people called Guanahani. Columbus explored the Caribbean islands, including Juana, Cuba, and Hispaniola, present-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and claimed these lands for the Spanish crown under the Doctrine of Discovery. It's like he just went around saying, okay, this is mine, and this one as well is mine. These people are crazy. Columbus returned to Spain with boatloads of gold, spices, and captive Native Americans, showcasing the New World to the Spanish monarchs and the Pope. His voyages initiated a significant exchange of plants, animals, goods, and ideas between Europe and the Americas, a process known as the Columbian Exchange. While Columbus is credited with opening the Americas to European exploration, his actions are also condemned for the exploitation and mistreatment of indigenous populations. Queen Isabella of Castile and King Ferdinand II of Aragon, the Catholic monarchs of Spain, are credited with sponsoring Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492. The aim was to find a westward sea route to Asia, avoid the Mediterranean trade routes controlled by the Moorish Ottoman Empire, gain wealth, and expand Christianity, forcing all indigenous people around the world to serve their new god, created in 325 AD. In April 1492, they signed the Capitulations of Santa Fe. This agreement promised Columbus rewards if he succeeded, including titles, authority over new lands, and a share of profits. The funding involved royal support, private investment, and using existing resources. For example, a city provided ships to repay a debt, and Columbus secured funding from moneylenders. Their support made the journey possible, leading to Columbus's voyages to the Americas. This marked the start of significant European exploration and colonization of the continent. When Christopher Columbus returned with his notes in his diary, he said the native would be easy to conquer. They are too nice. He said they were dark-skinned indigo people. He said they had so much gold you could choke a goat. They had some of the most beautiful women he had ever seen with his eyes. They had pure rivers, lakes, and streams that you can see to the bottom of. He said they played sports with rubber balls. They had good food, good wine, and music. They had a grass, which they later called wacky tobacco, which is a slang term for weed. He said when he tried it, he felt joy and peaceful. I wonder, was that before or after he kidnapped some Native Americans? But anyway, they said for nearly 5 months, Columbus explored the Caribbean, particularly the islands of Juana, Cuba, and Hispaniola, Santo Domingo, before returning to Spain. He left 39 men to build a settlement called La Navidad in present-day Haiti. He also kidnapped several Native Americans, between 10 and 25, to take back to Spain. Only 8 survived. Columbus brought huge amounts of gold as well as native birds and plants to show the richness of the continent he believed to be Asia. When Columbus arrived back in Spain on March 15, 1493, he immediately wrote a letter announcing his discoveries to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, who had helped finance his trip. The letter was written in Spanish and sent to Rome, where it was printed in Latin by Stephen Planck. Planck mistakenly left Queen Isabella's name out of the pamphlet's introduction, but quickly realized his error and reprinted the pamphlet a few days later. The Latin printing of this letter announced the existence of the American continent throughout Europe. Columbus said, "I discovered many islands inhabited by numerous people. I took possession of all of them for our most fortunate king by making public proclamation and unfurling his standard, no one making any resistance," Columbus wrote. In addition to announcing his momentous discovery, Columbus's letter also provides observations of the native people's culture and lack of weapons, noting that they are destitute of arms, which are entirely unknown to them, and for which they are not adapted, not on account of any bodily deformity, for they are well made, but because they are timid and full of terror. Writing that the natives are fearful and timid, guileless and honest, Columbus declares that the land could easily be conquered by Spain, and the natives might become Christians and inclined to love our king and queen and princes and all the people of Spain. 1492 marked 2 turning points: Granada's fall and Columbus's voyage. These events were deeply connected. Granada was the dress rehearsal, the Americas the main act. The tactics perfected in Spain, surveillance, legal justification, and cultural suppression, were exported across the Atlantic. The Doctrine of Discovery framed conquest as a holy mission, giving legal and religious cover for subjugation. Military intelligence and divide-and-conquer strategies used against the Moors were unleashed on indigenous empires. Cortés exploited rivalries among the Aztecs' enemies, just as Isabella had in Granada. The Spanish dismantled indigenous cultures, replacing temples with churches and imposing Christianity. Forced conversion, violence, and cultural erasure followed. The methods of control and suppression pioneered in Spain became the blueprint for the empire in the New World. The conquest of the Americas was built on lessons learned at home. After Columbus' 1492 voyage, numerous colonizers continued to sail to and explore the Americas, most being Knights of Templar. Key figures included John Cabot, who explored the east coast of North America for England in 1498. Juan Ponce de Leon explored Florida in 1513. Vasco Núñez de Balboa crossed the Isthmus of Panama and discovered the Pacific Ocean in 1513. Francisco Vázquez de Coronado journeyed through the American Southwest in 1539 to 1542. Jacques Cartier made voyages for France in 1534 and 1535, exploring the St. Lawrence River. Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo sailed up the California coast in 1542. Martin Frobisher reached the coast of Labrador and Baffin Island in 1576. Sir Francis Drake claimed New Albion in 1579. After Columbus, several explorers sailed to America, and in the 1600s, significant European settlement began. Key figures and events include Bartholomew Gosnold, the first Englishman to land on the New England coast, 1602. Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec City in 1608. Henry Hudson explored the Hudson River and Delaware Bay for the Dutch, 1609. The first permanent English settlement in North America, established in 1607. Moorish Zionist pilgrims established Plymouth Colony in 1620. New Netherland, the Dutch established New Amsterdam, 1624. Christianity was introduced to North America with the arrival of European colonizers in the 16th and 17th centuries. Spanish and French Catholic missionaries, as well as various Protestant groups, brought their religious beliefs to the newly colonized territories. The first recorded instance of Christianity in the Americas was by Spanish conquistadors led by Christopher Columbus in 1492. European powers like Spain, France, and England, with their respective Christian traditions, Catholicism, and various Protestant denominations, began colonizing the Americas. Spanish Catholicism was introduced in regions like New Spain, modern-day Mexico, and parts of the American Southwest, and the Caribbean. Protestantism, including Anglican, Puritan, and other denominations, found its way into areas like New England, Virginia, and the Carolinas. Some colonizers, like the Puritans, sought religious freedom and established communities where they could practice their faith without persecution. Through colonization, missionary work, and the desire for religious freedom, Christianity spread throughout the Americas like AIDS. Isabella's policies left a legacy of suppression from Andalusia to the Americas. After Granada's fall, promises of religious freedom were broken. Muslim Moors were forced to convert or leave. Moors lived under suspicion, their language, clothing, and customs banned. The Inquisition targeted them relentlessly, aiming for total assimilation. Ultimately, the Moors were expelled, erasing centuries of culture. Across the ocean, indigenous peoples faced similar destruction. Spanish conquerors, guided by the doctrine of discovery, saw native cultures as inferior. Temples were destroyed, religions suppressed, and languages banned. Missionaries used coercion to convert, while Spanish law replaced ancient traditions. The goal was not just conversion, but domination and erasure of identity. These strategies allowed Spain to rule vast, diverse populations, but at immense human cost. The scars of this cultural suppression are still visible today. Queen Isabella's strategies built a global empire, fueling Spain's golden age. But her triumphs came at a terrible price: persecution, forced conversion, and cultural erasure for Muslim Moors, Moorish Jews, and other indigenous peoples around the world. The tactics she pioneered, religious fervor fused with political ambition, legal doctrines for conquest, and mastery of deception, became the model for European colonialism. They've been jacking lands and flags ever since. The doctrine of discovery justified centuries of expansion and oppression. The idea of a single religion nation-state echoed through history, often with tragic results. False flags and legal manipulation became standard in international relations. Isabella didn't just build an empire, she wrote the playbook for modern colonialism. Her legacy is found in Spain's cathedrals and the ruins of Aztec temples, in the spread of Spanish and the silenced voices of the conquered. Her story is a reminder of how ambition, faith, and power can reshape the world, for greed and for worse. 5 centuries later, we still live with these consequences.